Morning, Austin.
Morning, Dad. How you doing?
Good. It feels good to be back. Last week we had a weekend off, and so we're back with another guest. I'm excited to tell his story. Today, our journey takes us inside the rise and fall of a boyhood dream, from the pinnacle of success to becoming a victim of success, being on top of the world to landing on rock bottom, realizing the folly of success leading to the foundation of faith. This is a triumphant story of redemption, purpose, and community building. Pivotal moment of clarity gave him a willingness to recognize that he needed help. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'll be your host. Alongside me today is my son, Austin, and would like to welcome David Angeron as our guest to awaken kingdom culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys.
We're excited to have you. Well, David, let's go back to when you were just a little kid growing up with your family. Tell us about mom and dad, if you had brothers or sisters, and just describe your childhood.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Morgan City, Louisiana. Mom and stepdad. My stepdad was in the oil field, so that was the reason we were in Morgan City. I have a sister that's 4 years younger than me. My real dad and stepmom, they lived in California. They had two kids as well. So I have several half brothers and sisters, but me and Angie grew up together in Morgan City with my mom and stepdad. Like I said, it's a real small town. Played every sport possible, as long as I can remember. Starting about 5 years old, I played baseball, football, basketball, tennis, golf. I mean, anything that had a ball to it, I wanted to be part of it.
How was, in those early years, how was success defined in your home, David?
In my home, it was really, I was kind of a loner. My parents were great. They supported everything I wanted to do, but I ate supper in my room at night. I didn't do a whole lot of stuff with the family. My stepdad would take me fishing and things like that, but my personal goals was just being the best athlete that I could. Like I said, from 6, 7 years old, I wanted to be that guy in the spotlight. I wanted all the accolades. I wanted people to cheer for me. I wanted to be the one winning, in the winning run at the last inning, those type of things. So, my focus from as long as I can remember was strictly being a successful athlete. And that was probably the start of my journey in the wrong direction.
When you mentioned Morgan City, Louisiana, I've recruited Louisiana my whole life, but there's probably a lot of listeners that have no clue of what it would be like growing up in Morgan City. Give them a little picture of Morgan City, David.
Well, I mean, when I was younger, it was not a big city, but it had a lot more than it does today. I mean, the oil field was pretty popular back then, but now all the oil companies moved to Houston, so I mean, it's almost a ghost town now. But there wasn't a whole lot there. I mean, we had a Walmart and a couple of little restaurants, but not very many stoplights. I mean, it's very small. The only people that really know where Morgan City is not from Morgan City. Is people that watch the Weather Channel all the time, because the hurricanes either start at Morgan City to Panama City, or Morgan City to, San Antonio or Galveston, Texas or something. So that's the only time we ever get on the news is, hurricane season.
Do you have a childhood memory that you have that's one of your favorites from that time growing up?
I mean, just, a lot of sports highlights. I mean, that's the main thing. That was all my memories back then, where, being in the spotlight from Little League to, Pop Warner football to high school football, just a lot of game winning scenarios that, I like to be in. The mental side of the game was always a pretty big influence on my part, because I was undersized. I was skinny. I was shorter than everybody else. I was the one that everybody told me, I would never play college football or never play college baseball because of my size. So that always motivated me to do things. But, I love the sports psychology side of it. As long as I can remember, back 12, 13 years old, I was into the mental side of the game.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with your parents, and then maybe a memorable conversation that you had with one of them growing up.
Like I said, me and my mom were very close growing up. My stepdad worked 7 and 7, so he was working offshore most of the time, and then when he would come home, we didn't have a great relationship growing up, but we had a pretty good relationship, and probably a relationship that I should have been better at, because he went out of his way to take me fishing, and I mean he was really responsible for taking me in the backyard, teaching me how to play catch, and throwing the football to me. And I don't think I was a very grateful child at that time. Now I look back and realize all the things that he did for me at that time, and wish I could go back and show my appreciation a little bit more. I think he knows that I love him now, and I do appreciate it, but back then I didn't. I didn't show it, and it really was just a spoiled, rotten little kid. I think I was just more worried about my own egos and my own goals and motivation. So, but my mom was always, at our games, she would support me every place I went. We had a very, very good relationship, and then when I moved off to professional baseball, we kind of drifted apart a little bit, but we stay connected over the phone quite a bit now.
Tell us about, obviously you said you knew you were very interested in sports very young. What was kind of the defining moment in your mind that inspired you in sport, or inspired you to get into sports?
Like I said, I don't remember what that starting moment was. I just remember from T-ball being, I was pretty good at it. I was faster than everybody on the block. I could just run naturally. I was very naturally talented. But again, I was undersized, so I had a lot of people that would, make fun of me. So I played with a chip on my shoulder because I wanted to prove everybody wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's what I started setting my goals as a young child. Okay, they said I was too small to play high school sports, so I would go and work out. I was up in the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning in junior high. Go and work out to try to get bigger, faster, stronger, just to prove everybody wrong. And that was the thing. I would put those goals out, and then I would reach those goals, and then it wouldn't be fulfilling. I'd have to do something else. So every level from little league to high school to college to professional baseball was all my personal goals that, God had nothing to do with. I grew up in a Baptist church in Bayou Vista, Louisiana, a little small community in Morgan City. And so I played church basketball and, went to Sunday school every Sunday, but God was not in my plans or in my goals at that time. It was all my personal goals on what I wanted to achieve in the sports world.
I asked you about your family and how success was defined in your home, but let's talk about as you're transitioning from those young boy years, let's say, into high school. And let's talk about your playing career there. I want you to tell me about your high school experience, sports you played, but how did you define success personally as you were moving into high school?
Again, I just wanted to be the best player I could. I wanted everybody to remember my name when I stepped on the court or in the field. It was an ego thing. As far as I can remember, played football, basketball, and baseball in high school. My freshman year. Made the varsity team, and, got to run bases my freshman year, and got to do a lot of cool things a lot of other freshmen didn't get to do. But after my freshman year basketball, we went to the playoffs. So I missed like the first 4 weeks of baseball season because, I was in basketball season. I was like, well, I don't like basketball that much. I don't want to miss baseball season. So my sophomore year, I quit basketball and I strictly just played football and baseball in high school, but then I was also playing, rec soccer on Saturdays. I was playing tennis tournaments on weekends. I was, playing everything I possibly could. But again, that was all I ever did. That's all I ever wanted to do was compete.
Did you have an influential coach that you remember from your high school years?
And I have so many. Lud Henry, was my head high school baseball coach. Tommy Bourgeois was my head football coach, and he's actually one that hired me to be the head baseball coach when I graduated from college. He was athletic director at my old high school. Unfortunately, he died from ALS, several years ago. But those are like father figures to me. Like my stepdad was away all the time, working offshore. But these guys really disciplined me well. As a kid, you don't want a coach to really discipline you, but when you look back and you realize, the things that they set in my path, it made a big difference in my life where I am now. Because without them, setting some rules and and disciplining me when I was doing things wrong, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you.
Do you have a favorite high school sports memory?
I think my senior year, my first 3 years of high school, our football team was not very good. I think we won one game in 3 years. And then my senior year, we got a new coach, old man Al Tragle. He was a legend, coached a long time in the area, and he came and took over. And our first home football game, I made an interception and ran it back for a touchdown and gave us like our first win in 3 years. And, the stadium erupted. It was pretty powerful, pretty exciting. And then we played in the state championship my sophomore year in high school too, which was pretty memorable. But probably that first football victory, and we ended up winning, I think 6-4 that year. But that first football victory at home was pretty powerful.
I bet. So tell us about kind of your college career and how your maybe some of the recruiting story and your experience in college.
Well, I had a challenging college recruiting career. My junior year, I actually committed to Gulf Coast Community College in Panama City, Florida, just to play baseball. My goal was to go there for 2 years and then transfer to Florida State. I was always a Florida State University fan since second grade. The first time I walked into Doak Campbell Stadium, I knew I wanted to be a Seminole, but out-of-state tuition was just out of range for us, so I'd have to go to junior college first and then transfer. Well, after I committed to Gulf Coast my senior year over the Christmas holidays, Coach Frazier, which was the head baseball coach at Gulf Coast in Panama City, died of a heart attack. So my senior year of baseball season, the new coach came in and he didn't want anything to do with me. He wanted to bring in his own recruits. So, I didn't get recruited again until the summer after my senior year. Coach Cooper Ferris from Mississippi Gulf Coast recruited me. So I ended up going to Mississippi Gulf Coast and playing baseball and football, and then transferring to Nicholls State University, where I played football for a while. So.
It's interesting. You say Gulf Coast. I had a nephew and a brother that both played at Gulf Coast. And Frazier, what was Coach Frazier's first name?
William Bill.
Okay. He wasn't tied to Miami at all, was he? Was he the guy that Frazier? Okay. And then you go to Mississippi Gulf Coast, which I was a football coach in that league. So, and then Nicholls down in Thibodaux, Louisiana. That's another great place. I love that. So describe for us a moment, or maybe it's a conversation, David, that from your playing days, whether it be at Nicholls or Mississippi Gulf Coast, that shaped the man you are today. Do you have one of those?
Like I said, I learned so much from Coach Ferris, and Rick Rhodes was the head football coach at the time at Nicholls when I was there. And again, I was a cocky little, I don't want to even use a bad word, but cocky little turd, in my high school and college years. It was all about me. I just wanted to win. I wanted everybody clapping and cheering me on. So those coaches kept me grounded. I missed breakfast check one day at Nicholls and had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go run till I puked. And remember my coaches sitting there eating donuts while I was, throwing up on the sideline. At the time I was, angry and, mad that they were making me do that. But, now when I got into my coaching career, I realized, the importance of the discipline side of things, and, it changes your life. And, that's what we try to do now. We try to change these students' lives that get caught up in bad habits and, chase the materialistic pursuit and the wrong things. Like, I try to teach them to do what I say and not what I did.
Where were you spiritually at this point in college?
Again, I was baptized when I was like 10 years old. So I was a Christian. I was a believer, but I didn't have a relationship. Like, when I was in college, I wasn't going to church anymore. I wasn't praying anymore. I just, I believed, but I was playing two sports, and that was my world. School wasn't important to me. My grades, I would do just enough to stay eligible in the classroom. I wasn't doing extra studying or anything like that. My whole priorities were, all about the game.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the highs and lows of your college career?
I guess the lows were when I actually walked away when Coach Rick Rhodes left, and I still had another year of eligibility left. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall that, I'm not going to play in the NFL. I'm not going to play in major league sports. I had an offer to go play some arena football in California for a few $100s a game, or go be the head baseball coach at my high school. making about 35,000 a year. So I decided to go and, you know, be the head baseball coach at my high school, and, you know, started my path in the coaching aspect there. But it was tough. It's a mental challenge whenever you walk away from the game that you love playing so much. And you know, I do a lot of sports psychology training now for college and professional athletes that
Mm.
when they get out the game, they don't know what to do with their lives, because, you know, they've been dedicating every hour of the day to training and competing, and it's a culture shock when you get out into the real world and have to get a real job and pay bills, and don't get just to suit up and lace up the spikes anymore.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So you said you got your first job at your high school. Talk about kind of how you got into your coaching career, and then, or not how, but like tell us about the start of your coaching career and scouting as well.
Like I said, my high school coach, Lud Henry, who I spoke about earlier, he was actually the principal at Berwick High School when I finished, you know, my college career. And he ended up hiring me, offered me the job as the head baseball coach and assistant football coach at Berwick. It was there where I met John Melvin. You know, John Melvin was a player for me there. He transferred from a little bitty school, Emmanuel Baptist, where he only had like 3 or 4 kids in his class, to a 3A high school at Berwick. So he was in culture shock. He was just a kid that I loved. You know, we had a good relationship. I was 22 years old at the time. He was like 16 or 17. So we just had a connection. You know, as a coach, you love all your students, and all your players, but you just have personal relationships with some. You have, you know, a personal bond with some. He was that first kid for me. You know, I was at Berwick for 4 years, and then, you know, went off to coach professional baseball from there. So it was a good stepping stone for me. Learned a lot coaching there. Coach Ludd, he was my principal, but he also helped me as an assistant coach. So he kind of guided me through some of the coaching challenges of dealing with parents and, you know, different player personalities and things like that. But, you know, it was a pretty cool experience coaching back at my old high school and seeing them compete every day.
Yeah. What was your how do you get connected with the major leagues?
Actually, one of my friends that I went to high school with, James Gamble, he was a couple of years older than me. He was running a independent league in the Southeast United States, and he called and said, "Hey, Pensacola, Florida, they're starting a new independent team, and they need a general manager. Would you be interested in doing it just for the summer?"
Yeah.
So I just went in to do that for the summer. Ended up, you know, selling tickets and season tickets and starting my career in the front office. I had to fire our manager mid-season for harassing one of the interns. Bring somebody else in to kind of help, and, you know, did all the scouting and the recruiting from that point. We ended up winning the championship that year, and Quint Studer, the owner of the Pensacola Blue Wahoos, he bought the team mid-season. And at the end of the year, he said, "David, you know, how do we keep you here full time?" So, you know, he offered me a full-time job, and I stayed there for 3 years, and then became the hitting coach in Springfield, Missouri. And then from there, I went to the Milwaukee Brewers as a scout.
Wow, that's awesome. So when you're recruiting a player, tell us some of the qualities and things that you're looking for that helps that, or that you've been able to identify the difference between them becoming a good player and just another player.
It's different in the college and the professional level, because as a scout for the Brewers, you know, there's what we call overall future potential. So if I turn in a kid that's 5'8" and he doesn't succeed, I lose my job. Whereas if I turn in a kid that's 6'4" and he doesn't succeed, you know, you're safe. So at that level, it's kind of hard to recruit the undersized players like myself, which is frustrating, because a lot of times those kids are the ones that are more mentally tough and that they know what it's like to play with a chip on their shoulder. So at the college level, it's a little bit different. You know, we look for the 5 tools, obviously, that, you know, baseball carries: the speed, the power, the arm strength, things like that. But the work ethic and the character is a huge part of the recruiting process for us now, because we want those guys that are going to be, you know, your program players. They're going to be good for your program and not just for, you know, their skills. So, you know, it's a little bit different at the college level and the pro level, but I enjoy it. I love it. I mean, I've gotten to see some great players and scout some great players, and, you know, it's pretty fun.
How long were you with the Brewers?
2 years.
Awesome.
Yeah, I covered Texas and Louisiana with the Brewers, so it was a good experience. Then I got tired of traveling. I lived on the road for 15 years away from my kids. I didn't get to see them growing up. I didn't watch my son play baseball till he was in eighth grade. I think was when I finally got out and was able to see him play consistently. It was cool because when he was 4 years old, he got to ride on the bus with Carlos Castilla and a bunch of different major league players with us, or long bus rides. Sometimes learning things he probably shouldn't have learned at 4 or 5 years old, but he did learn a lot from traveling with me in pro ball. But it was still, there was times where I was in Springfield, Missouri, throwing batting practice, and my ex-wife at the time, she would call and say, David, Drake's coach can't even set up the pitching machine. And come to find out, he had a softball pitching machine trying to put baseballs in it. And, here I am 12 hours away trying to think, all right, man, this is what's coaching my kid, and here I am helping other players, So at that point in time, I was about 35 years old. I realized it was time for me to get out and move back home and try to, spend more time with my kids and my family.
Yeah.
So, David, I read somewhere as I was doing a little research, I hope it's true, but you make a statement, correct me if I'm wrong, but you make a statement describing yourself as a victim of success. You had all kind of success growing up. Take us back, if you don't mind, our listeners, and walk us through, what that really meant to you, both professionally and personally. You're a victim of success.
I was a victim of chasing the materialistic pursuit, my goals and, my purpose in life at an early age was winning as many championships as I could, making as much money as I could, being in the spotlight. I was an addict. I never did drugs in my life, but I was addicted to fame and I was addicted to women. I had a lot of women in different cities and all, and wasn't a very good Christian through my college professional career. But signing autographs everywhere I went. People would say, man, David Angeron's got the best job in the world. I lived in a penthouse condo on the beach. I drove around in a Hummer. I had all kind of fancy cars, VIP treatment everywhere I went. But again, my life was, empty. Every time I would reach a goal that I set for myself, I would wake up and think, okay, what do I do next? Because I'm still not happy. I'm still, had all the money in the world, had all the fame. But I wasn't at peace. I didn't have that joy in my life. I mean, I was truly chasing the wrong priorities.
Mm.
So talk about the kind of the turning point, the rebirth of the whole thing.
Again, when I was about 35 and I was sitting in my hotel, and I remember thinking, man, I'm missing my kids growing up. I've been through a divorce, here I am again with a bunch of money, nice materialistic things, but I'm 35 years old and I'm depressed. I'm still in the game that I love. So at that point in time, I started praying. I started saying, okay, why am I depressed? What do I need to do? When I left Louisiana and left Morgan City, I said I was never going back to Morgan City. I didn't want to go back to Louisiana. I was like, I'm staying away from that place. But at the time, I felt like God was pulling me back there to reconcile things with my kids, build that relationship with them. And again, I started praying, and it took a little while for me to get that answer on what I should do. I worked a baseball clinic here in Pensacola one day with a bunch of 8 to 12-year-olds, and they were talking about the Major League Draft. And so I asked them, I said, if you could pick anybody from any year, who would be your number one draft choice? And of course, they all started hollering Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds and all these different names. And one little kid in the back raised his hand and said, I would pick God first. And the rest of the kids started laughing at him. And I just stopped him. I said, don't laugh. I mean, that's a great answer. And I gave him a gift bag, like a bat bag or something as a door prize. But that night I went home and I was still praying. Like, God, why am I depressed? What do I need to do to get out of this rock bottom feel? And that's when it hit me. That 8-year-old kid told me what I needed to do. You need to put God first. If you pick God first and make him your number one draft choice, things are going to start to change. At that point in time, I got out of professional baseball, moved back to Morgan City. The depression didn't end right away. Right. I was still kind of wondering, okay, why am I back in Morgan City? I'm here with my kids, but I'm not happy. It took a while before it really kind of kicked in. But I continued praying. I continued building that relationship with Christ. And then I ran into John Melvin's sister, Jean Melvin, He was in nursing school when I was coaching John, so I never knew who she was. I mean, this is 10 or 15 years after I coached John, and we went out on a couple of dates and ended up getting married. And my life has totally changed since I turned my relationship over to Christ. I mean, again, I was always a Christian, but I really didn't know the Bible, and I really didn't know Christ until I was at that turning point of hitting rock bottom and realizing you got to put him first in everything.
Yeah. Describe how mental and spiritual health are interconnected.
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Describe how mental and spiritual health are connected. Or
interconnected.
interconnected.
It's huge. Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I wrote a book a while back called The Challenging Road to Success, and the mental and the spiritual success goes together probably more than anything. Especially the world we live in today is such a dark place. Every time you turn on social media, turn on the news, you hear negativity, people bashing everybody. And if you don't mentally block that out and mentally be able to overcome that and try to turn it into something positive, you just go down the wrong path. I make a commitment now to try to be the light in this dark world and try to be as positive as I can. Because I remember I used to bash coaches on social media. If my football team lost, I was bashing them all over social media. Like you see, anytime your local football teams lose, that's the first thing everybody does is go, start talking trash about the coaches. And I was one of those people. I would just get caught up in the negativity of the world. But adversity's, life's tough, and adversity is going to hit you from every angle, through your marriage, through your job, through just walking outside. You're going to face adversity. So if you don't have the mental toughness of it, and you don't have a relationship with Christ, life's hard. I mean, it's hard with Christ in your life, but it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible without him. And I witnessed it firsthand. But a lot of it is a mental thing of staying focused on priorities, and got to put God first and be able to block out the negative stuff in this world.
Yeah.
So David, you've shared with us a little bit about you walking away from baseball. You've talked about those conversations you're having with God. You're now married. I think you said her name was Jean, which we'll talk about her more later. Talk to us now about this new calling and this mission, John Melvin University. Why all of a sudden out of the blue do you say, I'm going to start a university?
It's crazy. People ask me every day, how do you start a university? And my answer still to this day is, I don't know. I can't go back and pinpoint, the process. All I can tell you is we were living in New Orleans. We moved to New Orleans so my younger daughter could go to Performing Arts High School there. So we went downtown New Orleans for 4 years. My oldest son was playing Division I baseball. My oldest daughter was at another Division I school going to be a vet. And then Maddie, graduated and went to, she's in New York now. She was the one at the Performing Arts High School, but now she's at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. Mm-hmm. And they were all just getting pushed away from religion, getting political agendas forced on them. They would call me and say, Dad, I can't write the essay that I want to write because I get penalized if I don't vote the way they want me to vote, if I don't believe in the things they want me to believe. So we witnessed indoctrination and the force of political agendas firsthand. And people always thought we were crazy when we first started talking about it. But now that Charlie Kirk, situation came about, so people are starting to open their eyes and, maybe public college is a problem right now. And but we witnessed that firsthand. And at the time, I just felt God tapping me on the shoulder saying, I need you to do something about it. I had coaches calling me, say, David, help me open a post-grad or one of those gap year schools. And I said, no, I'm not interested in that. I think that doesn't benefit anybody. So if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right and open a true university and prepare kids for a career. Use sports as a vehicle for, leading them to Christ. But, we tell everybody, if you come into our school just to play sports, it's not going to be a place for you because we hold them accountable in the classroom. We make them go to chapel service once a week. We had several students baptized the first year. We actually had 2 baptized in Pensacola Beach this morning. So it's a pretty awesome experience. It's the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, but yet by far the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life.
Well, I hope you're enjoying our podcast today, but I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsors. Our nonprofit organization, The Win Awakening, is the reason we're able to have this podcast. The Win Awakening is a sports ministry network that began in November of 2022. The WIN mission is to encourage and empower leaders to live from a place of victory as they awaken to their wholeness and true identity within environments where they can be known. Our goal is to create safe environments where transparency and vulnerability are accepted and value and worth are recognized in an atmosphere of love. If you'd like to support the WIN Awakening, as well as our podcast, you can donate now at winawakening.org. And please spread the word about our ministry with your friends. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to Awaken Kingdom Culture on our Spotify and YouTube channels to listen or watch our podcast weekly, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. And if you'd like to follow my socials, as well as hear about the upcoming podcast news, watch the latest clips, and get an inside look at my life behind the scenes, you can follow us on Instagram at Awaken Kingdom Culture and Facebook, Awaken Kingdom Culture Podcast. Well, let's get back to the podcast.
Awesome. So describe how... Go ahead, Deb.
No, you're good. You're good.
Describe how you came to your philosophy.
I'm sorry, Austin. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Describe how you came to your philosophy.
Educational philosophy, or just business philosophy, or
your educational.
Again, I think it's just a true calling from God. Like I said, growing up, my goals, I set all my goals myself and didn't look for the will of God. So every time I reached a goal, it was an empty feeling. I needed to do something else. Now, I don't do anything without asking God first and looking for those answers. And sometimes they're hard to find. You know, a lot of times a door will close on you. And I tell people all the time, a lot of people that are not mentally tough, you know, if the door closes, they automatically go look to do something else. But sometimes that door is closed because you're doing something that God wants you to do, and the devil's trying to stop you. So all it takes is a little push to get through that door. But without a relationship, knowing, okay, which doors are closing because God wants to close them, or which doors are closing because the devil's trying to stop you from doing something good, you can't do that without a relationship with Christ and without, you know, praying and asking for his will and his guidance and his clarity on things. And he will answer you, and he'll tell you which ones you need to go through and move forward with, and which ones you need to walk away from. You know, somebody would have told me 10 years ago that I would be an author and an owner of a college, I would have laughed in their face, because that was at no point in time in my life did I have plans on doing either one of those.
Right.
But on my 15-hour drive to Kansas to watch my son play junior college baseball, I started talking in my phone, making notes on mental training and things like that. And that's where I wrote my first book, the Mental Training Guide for Elite Athletes. Was in my car on a 15-hour drive. I started, you know, just talking, and, you know, it'd take the notes for me. And when I got to Kansas and I told my son, hey, Drake, I'm gonna write a book, he laughed at me. He said, Dad, you're a dumb jock. You can't write a book, you know. But when you follow God's calling and God's will, you know, you're going to be able to do things that you never thought you could do.
David, talk to us about the Mental Master Method. What is that?
Again, growing up, I was always the undersized kid. You know, I was always facing the challenges of, you know, just being smaller than everybody else and not having, you know, the same luxuries that a lot of other people had. So it became apparent early on. People would always tell me, David, you make chicken salad out of chicken crap. You know, it's you know, every time you have a bad situation, you turn around, make it good. And a lot of it's just optimism and, you know, being the glass half full type person. You know, I see a challenge and I'm going to be a problem solver and go figure it out. So the Mental Master Method is really trying to teach people how to do that and, you know, make something positive out of something negative instead of just not being problem solvers. And that's one of the things we see a lot of challenges in higher education, especially in the public higher education. Kids don't know how to problem solve anymore because they're getting just agendas forced on them. They're not learning how to debate. You know, they don't know how to debate anybody and disagree. You know, we can agree to disagree all day long, and you know, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to care about you if you don't believe in the same things I believe. But today, you know, if you disagree with somebody, they're either offended or they're going to go and shoot you. So they don't have that mental capacity to be able to disagree and, you know, be able to overcome some adversity and different problem solving skills.
Right.
So, the mental master method is really trying to just educate, people on the mental toughness of life.
How would you encourage others, including yourself as the example, to integrate your personal faith in a topic such as something I think you've written about, God is your teammate? How would that come out in your coaching philosophy?
It's just something you got to dedicate yourself to. It's not something that comes easy. I wake up every morning, I read my devotional. I pray every night. A lot of people want to pray in the streets and they want to pray in front of people and things like that. But it's when you can get in private and really open your relationship and communicate with God is when the magic happens. You don't have to put on a show. I just want to be the light and, try to influence as many people as I can. My goal now is I want to get to heaven first and foremost, and I want to bring as many people with me as I can. And to do that, you got to turn off the noise of the world. There's so much background noise and so much negative influence that without your priorities in the right place and without really putting God first, it's challenging. And then, my wife is a very close second. God's first and my wife is second. I didn't have that in my first marriage. My first marriage, baseball was first, partying and everything else was second. God was down at the bottom. My wife was down at the bottom. When I had kids, my kids were, put up at the top. And unfortunately, a lot of people in this world, they do that when they have kids. They put their kids first and their marriage suffers and their relationship with Christ suffer because all of their focus is on their child when it needs to be reversed. When you have kids, that's when your relationship with Christ should be even more powerful. So your kids can see that, and your relationship with your wife or your spouse should be, just as important. So everything else falls into place underneath it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, David. We talk a lot about in our ministry at Win Awakening about living from a place of victory. And there's a lot of conversation in the Christian community. You'll hear people say the victorious Christian leader or victorious Christian life. And, as Austin and I share with people, we talk about WIN, our ministry's Win Awakening, and WIN stands for wholeness, identity, and what it means to be known by God. Describe what it means to you, David, to live victoriously.
Again, I want to be, called and looked upon as serving my purpose here on earth. And that's one thing that opened my eyes whenever I was, worried about all the other stuff that wasn't important. I know now when I die and go to heaven, the good Lord's not going to worry about how many best-selling books I wrote or how many championships I've won or how many players I signed to the big leagues. He's going to be more worried about me loving other people and the impact that I made in other lives and trying to, build his kingdom. So that's where victory is for me now. Seeing our kids get baptized this morning, that's a win for me. We don't have to win a single baseball game or a single basketball game this year. And we've already had success in baseball and basketball because 2 of our players got baptized this morning in those 2 sports. So that's what victory means in my eyes right now.
Amen.
Talk to us about your personal project, the children's book series.
Again, that's just trying to make a positive impact because I think our younger generations were lost. You're starting to see a turn. I think the younger generation is starting to turn back to Christ and to positive impact. But for a while, it was going the wrong direction. Especially young athletes, these parents spending a ton of money on private lessons and, going out of their way to play tournaments on Sundays and over the weekends and things like that. And they're not disciplining their kids. They're not, teaching them about Christ. They're not teaching about mental toughness. Everybody was, living that entitled life that like they felt like they were owed something that they didn't earn. So several of my books are, the youth books are written about that. So younger kids can see, earn it, mental master and earn it, Ernie. It teaches the kid that you got to earn your way. You're not just going to be given success. You're not going to be giving a starting position. You're not going to be giving your way to heaven. I mean, you got to earn it, and positivity and, just a lot of different ones. So when I did the children's series, it was mainly to focus on, trying to help the younger generations, understand the mental toughness side of things and trying to connect them spiritually as well.
Cool. That's cool.
I like some of those titles: Positive Pam, Humbly Henry.
Right.
Those are pretty good. Is that book out for people if they wanted to get that, David?
Yes, they're all available on Amazon, and I think Barnes and Nobles as well. But definitely can get them off of Amazon.
Okay, great. Well, I want to talk a little bit about legacy with you. And, you've talked about the importance of family, community, culture. Tell us about your family. You've sort of mentioned everyone in a roundabout way, but tell us a little bit more about your wife and your children.
Again, I met my wife. We've been married almost 9 years now. We dated for 2 years before we got married. But again, she's my world. She's my best friend. I mean, she's the backbone of where my transformation actually started. She grew up in a Pentecostal church and, very, very religious. When her brother was killed in a motorbike accident, she kind of broke away from her church, but, stayed connected with her faith, which is pretty powerful to me. Ever since I met her, she's, been doing her morning Bible studies, and she knows the Bible more than I probably ever will. I'm still learning the Bible every day, but she's really dedicated to it and has really opened my eyes on a lot of things. She does anesthesia at the local hospitals. That's her main job, but she's also a fitness trainer, so she keeps me healthy as well. Actually, she and I are flying to Nashville, Tennessee next weekend to compete in the Spartan Trifecta obstacle course race series.
Cool.
So
Oh, wow.
So 50 years old and we're still competing in obstacle course races. So, that's always fun. And it keeps me in shape because I hate to run. I was a sprinter in college and, in sports. So I hated to run long distance. So, she keeps me grounded in my faith and in my health. So, couldn't ask for a better teammate in life. I mean, she's just awesome. She has a daughter, Maddie Carpin, which I treat her like she's mine. She's my stepdaughter, but she's the one that's at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. Jean's actually up there right now visiting her while she finished her senior year in fashion marketing. And then I have three kids of my own from my previous marriage. And Drake is actually our head baseball coach at our Pensacola campus. He played Division I baseball and ended up playing independent baseball for 3 years. Holds a couple of records for stolen bases, and he was a pretty good player, undersized. He got to go play professionally in Australia, but he was just that work ethic. He's been grinding through the training facilities and things like that, and I can't express how proud of him I am, because he was just one of those kids that as a scout, I looked at him in high school and said, Drake, you're 147 pounds. You may play a couple of years of junior college baseball, but you're not going to play Division I baseball. You're not going to play professionally. And I guess he took that, personal and went to junior college in Kansas and ended up putting on 20 pounds and became an all-around five-tool player and, played the game for a long time. And unfortunately, COVID, they cut down the draft, so that kind of cut his chances of getting drafted. But I'm proud of him. I have a daughter that's just graduated a biology degree from Nichols, and she's applying for vet school now. She's teaching English at one of the high schools in town while she waits to get into vet school. And then my youngest son is a senior in high school here. He plays in the band, and he's got an engineering scholarship at UCF. So he'll be going to UCF next year.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Now, did I hear you say that, and I'm assuming this is the reason that the university's named John Melvin, is that because of Gene's brother?
Yes. Yeah. When we decided to do this, we just figured there's no better person to name it after because, again, he and I had a relationship. His smile just lit up a room. His personality was it's catching. When you walked in and John was around, you were laughing, you were smiling, there was no negativity with him ever. And he was just that special type of kid. So, when he was killed in a motorbike accident, I was actually coaching professional baseball in Missouri at the time. And I remember getting that call, and it was like my brother just died, and came home for the funeral. And I'm sure I saw Gene at the funeral, but I don't remember seeing her. I remember seeing his mom and dad, John's mom and dad, and I are very close still to this day. And I'm blessed to have them as in-laws now, but they were good friends of mine and supporters of mine whenever I was coaching. But yeah, when we decided to do this, we're like, there's no better person to name it after because he was the model student. I mean, he was a Christian kid. He was, just that one that lit up the room. He was the light in the dark world, and we need more people like him.
Yeah.
We were talking off air before we started. Tell our listeners a little bit about some of the plans that you have for John Melvin University. You have, like you said, multiple campuses right now, but what are some of the dreams you have for this, David?
Again, I leave it up to God. I ask God every day for clarity and wisdom on it. I didn't expect to have 3 campuses already. I mean, we're just in our 4th year. We started out with 87 students our first year in Louisiana. Now between the 3 campuses, we have almost 400. My network in baseball has always been pretty big, so I could probably open 10 campuses tomorrow and have baseball teams at every campus. But we're trying to grow at a pace that we don't water down the quality, because the sports, again, is just a bonus. We got to have quality instructors. We got to have quality ministry leaders and, mission team and things like that. So putting those pieces in place will kind of determine how fast we grow from here going forward. But our goal is, again, to help as many people as we can. We're going through the accreditation process right now. We're almost finished with accreditation. People think that you can just open the doors of a college to be automatically accredited. It doesn't work like that. I mean, it takes a minimum of 3 years. They want to see 3 years of financials, and they track all your academic process. We've been getting praised on our academic side. Our president, our academic team do phenomenal work, and our students are transferring to schools like Auburn and major universities, and our credits are transferring even without accreditation. So, that's a positive on our administration and our teaching staff. But our goal is, again, to have as many campuses as God wants us to open, and help us make a positive impact on communities and on our students' lives.
David, how would someone that might have interest in being a part of John Melvin and in regards to enrolling, how would they go about doing that? Is there somewhere online they would be able to find your information?
Yeah, I mean, our website, johnmelvinuniversity.org for our Louisiana campus, and then johnmelvinchristiancollege.com or jmchristiancollege.com for our Florida campuses. So there's an application link there. Also, our social media pages have links to the enrollment process. We have an admissions team available for phone calls. So if you have any questions or anything like that, they'll be happy to help you as well.
Austin, let's jump to legacy.
What has been the most significant moment in your spiritual journey, looking back?
I think you just really realizing that God is real and on your side. I've always been a believer, and, there was always times that you question, things that you hear, things that you read in the Bible, it's not real clear. And then once you have that true relationship and you start seeing the answers God gives you and different things like that, it really is eye-opening to, man, not only is he real, he's right here. He's right here in my life every day.
Amen.
And you feel his presence. You look outside at nature and you realize that there's no possible way something that beautiful is here without a creator.
Right.
And, just waking up every morning knowing that now I have that personal relationship, and I'm still a sinner. I'm still not perfect and will never be perfect. I'm still learning the Bible every day. I'm a Bible study guide right here next to me right now. But it is an awesome feeling to just know that you have that relationship, and no matter what, he has your back. I used to wake up middle of the night anxious and, worried about finances or worried about what my next job's going to be or what my next move's going to be. Now I sleep all night long. And, even if I have a stressful day coming up the next day, it doesn't stop me from sleeping, because I know God's going to, follow through with whatever his will is. If it's something that's not meant to be, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to stress about it. It doesn't mean no good to stress and worry about it, because if it doesn't work out, God has a different plan for me that's going to be better. So when you have that joy and that peace in your life, there's nothing more rewarding than that. And I wish I could get more people to understand that importance, because you'll live a lot longer when you don't have that stress, live in a stressful world. And, without that peace and joy, it really wears on your body.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Amen to that. I can relate to that. That's for sure. So, David, if you were able to have one conversation with some of your former teammates, players, coaches, people you've associated with over the years, one final conversation, what would you say to them?
Well, first off, that I'm proud of them because the majority of them that I've coached, I've stayed in contact with for so many years. And the best part about it is when they call me and tell me, "Hey, I'm getting married, coach," or "Hey, I'm having a baby," and different things like that. And then the second part, I would say I'm sorry because I wasn't a very good example back in some of those times. I didn't live a life that they should have followed, and especially in my professional career. Um, there's a lot of regrets that I wish I could go back and do things different, and been a better example for them, and been a better example for my kids, and that's one thing I take pride in now is, when my kids look at my marriage now, they see what a marriage is truly supposed to be like. And my younger kids didn't see that growing up because, we lived separate. I lived in Florida. My wife lived in Louisiana. I was totally focused on traveling and, my baseball career. So I think the most important conversation with me being apologizing to them and just saying, I wish I'd have been a better example and a more positive light to lead you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. When someone spends time with you, what do you want them to experience and how do you want to be remembered, David?
I just want them to experience positivity and joy and love everybody. I saw a thing, we have the graffiti bridge here in Pensacola, where people can just go and paint random stuff on the bridge legally. And, of course, we had the Charlie Kirk thing posted, and the next day it was covered with all kind of nasty messages and things like that. But then the day after, somebody posted, "Try to love somebody you learn to hate." I had to think about it for a minute, like, okay, what does that really mean? And, people hate people they see on social media they don't know. We hate football coaches because they don't win football games, but you don't know their family.
Yeah.
You hate rivalries. You hate people that you learn to hate without even knowing who they are. John Phelps, the owner of Full Sail and one of my partners, he has a son with Down syndrome, and he's the most loving person I've ever met. And he has a shirt and he always wears it. It says, "Love everybody." Mm-hmm. And, that's what I want people to experience when they meet me now, is just how to be a positive impact in this world and to love everybody. And, just be that light, and let's try to make younger generations realize the importance of, faith first and foremost, and then just being a positive influence on everybody beneath them.
Well, we always give our guests the final opportunity. We call it final words or words of life, as we speak words of life into each other. But before I close us, and Austin will follow after you share, is there anything that you'd like to say to our listeners in your final words?
Just take the high road. That's, whatever that may be in your life. People try to take the low road a lot, and they want to take everything, like, not give anything. They were always worried about what can it do for me? Even the middle road people, they're like, okay, I'll do this for you, but what are you going to do for me? Take the high road. Be that giving person that you don't need anything in return. Be the light, be the guidance. Just be that person that no matter what, no matter how bad somebody hurts you, you're able to forgive them. You're able to move on, and you're just able to, always take the high road no matter what your situation is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
David, thank you for sharing with us today. I mean, it was a pleasure to sit and listen to your story and just, the walk you had with God just in the midst of all of it. And, him just revealing himself over time and continuing to walk and grow and just the cool things that you're doing. To start a university, that's a big undertaking. And but like you said, it's something that's you saw a need in culture, and you're bringing light where you are. And so I appreciate your heart and what you're doing, and just your journey and your story that God had and is continuing with you.
I appreciate the invite, guys, and I'm grateful for what you do, and really looking forward to following your path and your mission as well. I mean, you guys both do a great job, and knowing where you came from, Ken, and to where you are now, is a big impact on my life as well. So thank you for doing this.
Well, David, I want to, I think of, as I listen to your story today, thank you for your kind comments, is I see a visionary, and, having been around visionaries in my career, and even somewhat, I would say I have a similar heart as you do. It takes a lot to step out in faith. And so I just want you to know, I really respect your faith, your willingness to follow what Papa is putting into your heart in those highs and low moments. And I know that, as Austin already said, that to start a university is quite an undertaking. And I just encourage our listeners that are out there to really do some homework and look into John Melvin University, and those that are out there that can help, play a role in John Melvin University. I think of even how we crossed paths through the people at Full Sail initially, and I'm just grateful that I have a new friend and look forward to seeing where God takes our relationship as well. So, Austin, I just thank you for allowing us today to share your story with our listeners at Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.